and gentlemen, welcome back. It is almost 2023, and we are here one more time for not any good things. That's right, we're here for the top worst. I am Will TLD, the former Apple Specialist Creative and Genius. Alongside me every week is the Apple Creative Retired Book Publisher, Soccer Mom Recorder, Jurassic Park owner, Black Coffee Drinker, Juror number 12, the Retirement Home President, Mr. Tito Trout, drummer, Frank Funk is here with me as always. You're right. What's your 2023 goal? To be alive?
Yeah, I guess that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know, like, I gave you that quote from Keith Richards last time, so I guess that's applicable. You know, it's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere.
Yeah, I'm going to be having one night with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I bought tickets for my wife for that to go to Atlantic City. And then we're going to just be with my sister for the evening because we have kids. And, you know, you can't really do much when you have kids. So, and when you have adults who go to bed before 9 o'clock.
I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire in New Orleans in 1995. 95? Yeah, 95. And they were awesome then. I'm sure what's left of the group should be good now. So,
yep, I'm just looking forward to just seeing some live music again right before the end of the year. By the way, if we're doing the top worst in this episode, if you would like to go check it out on the top here, you can go to the top 5 best that we've already done. But this is the worst. So let's talk about it, Frank. You're going to go through your top 5 than mine. Our lists this year are completely different, which is good. So we have a lot to talk about. So let's talk about your worst.
All right. So coming in at number 1, I'll start with number 1, is the M2 MacBook Pro 13-inch. Basically,
that's the worst. That's your worst overall, right?
Yes, that's number 1.
That's number 1.
And I chose that because after looking into it, it's basically the same chassis that they've used in the past.
It's exactly the same chassis.
And the only difference is the new chip, which is not to say that the new chip isn't good. It's just that I kind of expected more new things with that new chip, But so anyway, that came in as my number 1. My number 2 is the iPhone SE. Now I chose this because I never really saw the need for the SE at all, but it seemed to be a low cost for a lot of people to get them into the iPhone structure. But I just felt that I don't see the need for it. I really don't.
I do see the need for it, but it's what they didn't really add much to the second gen. That's really what it is, that we're just using a lot of old stuff in there.
Right.
At least the storage capacity is 64 gigs, but they also increased the price of it as well. But yeah, I mean, they should just add just a tiny bit more to it.
Yeah. My number 3 is the iPad 10th generation.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know why.
There's so many mistakes with that iPad. Like, it's like ridiculous. The fact that it didn't replace the first one, and then on top of it, it's using the first gen Apple Pencil, which is how old is that product now? 7 years old, probably, that Apple Pencil?
Oh, yeah, at least. Yeah, and it, I just don't get it. But, maybe it's just a matter of, they had this old stock parts sitting around and, they just wanted to use them up. I don't know. That could be the issue with it. So
just so everyone understands, the first Apple Pencil came out September 9th of 2015. So I was correct on the 7 years. Yeah. So they're using a 7-year-old device, to work with a current generation model, which almost looks like an Air, which they changed one feature that everyone does agree with the camera being centered, but the rest of the lineup that was either updated or changed does not have that lineup.
Yeah.
It's just strange.
Yep. Yeah. It's one of those marketing things. Like, you wonder what the marketing team
thought process of that. Yeah.
So number 4 is the Studio Display. Now, while I absolutely love the display for what it is, what I don't love about it is the price.
Right.
I bought a Mac Studio, and I just couldn't see spending another $1,500 for what I do anyway. Let's put it that way, for the display. And then if you want the height adjustment, it costs you more money. So that made my worst list. And then my last is the Apple Watch Series 8. We talked about this a little bit before, and that is, why would you buy a Series 8 for like another $100 or $200? You can get the newer one, the larger one, more advanced features but their pricing structure has always been that way. If you commit to a certain amount for another 100 or 150, you can go up. So you're always in that dilemma about, well, if I'm in for X, for a few more dollars, I can get the bigger, better one. That may be part of their strategy. I don't know.
I mean, at least they're keeping the price the same. Like Apple Watch Series 8, at least is the same price, at least, because if they increased it, for an example, it would have made no sense. So yeah, that's just a really weird thing with the Apple Watch Series 8, as the watch keeps getting a series upgrade, but nothing significant is being added to it, and that's the point. You know, that's why I still have a Series 4, and I still have yet to want to upgrade. Until I get to that point. But good list. I agree with everything on this list. Honestly, iPhone, I would say SE shouldn't be as high. I wouldn't necessarily think it's that bad. It's just an affordable phone, and they're just trying to get people who are very old who can't use a flip phone anymore.
Hey, let's not pick on the seniors.
Yeah. Well, listen, Frank,
they need some love and technology too.
We do, but like someone who would be like my father-in-law would not need a $700 phone. Okay. That's the reality of it. If anything, I would buy him
but you as his favorite son-in-law should just get him one just because you love him.
And he won't use it. He refuses. So I tried, but we're not going to get there. So we're going to go down my list of the top 5 worst. So starting at the bottom, working my way up. So that's the way you're supposed to do it, Frank.
Sorry.
Apple Studio Display is on my 5th. The main reason I put that on there was, again, the price. That should have been $1,000. And 2, they reused a display and a camera system from an iMac that, to be honest, there was nothing other than a tiny bit of brightness increase. It's exactly the same as an iMac old school display. And that's why I don't like it, because they reuse parts, again, to make a display that nothing enhances that from a previous experience. There's nothing, and that should have been $1,000 display tops with the height adjustment already included.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I think that would have been perfect for that. Now, my second one, and this is why it's not the top 5 products, more the top 5 moments, is the emerging unions at Apple stores. We had a whole story about this, and we don't agree that unions are going to work the best for Apple stores for a lot of reasons. Yeah. They're also joining unions that don't make any sense to what they do. And so far, from what I understand, there's a lot of agreements and disagreements, but things have been taken away based on some of the things that I've read out there. So the idea of unions in Apple stores, to me, is just doesn't work.
Well,
in that environment.
My biggest bone of contention from the very beginning was, all right, here's what you get. List what you get without a union, what you and I got, other than the hourly wage, because, that's going to fluctuate over time, right? What additional benefits are you going to get? I mean, I pulled out my paperwork and I looked at the benefits that were offered. I mean, there's pages and pages of benefits that you get right off the bat. So, and I could never find a definitive answer what the unions were going to give them additionally. My only conclusion from that was they would go into collective bargaining. They would get, I'll say, the majority of what they already get for free. And Apple would take some things away. And on top of it, they'd pay union dues.
I'm going to get this. So Apple, back in October, announced additional funds for education and new healthcare features in some states. But the unionized employees of the Townsend, Maryland, which is the one that unionized, will not receive these benefits. So that's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
They're not going to let them have perks because they unionize. So this is what we're talking about. If Apple has definitely this year, and I put it on my top 5, has improved what they offer to their employees at a retail level to help them not unionize, to satisfy them, which I think they have.
You had said that they're going to penalize them. I wouldn't say it's penalizing them because
they're not penalizing them. They're not giving them perks that they are giving to retail employees.
Once they sign a collective bargaining agreement with the union, that agreement is in effect. It's a contract. So it's going to be in effect for whatever term they sign, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is. So anything that the company itself gives to the non-union stores, the union stores won't get that until the next collective bargaining agreement.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep. So that's one thing. The third thing I thought was the worst idea was killing the iPod Touch. Here's why. Because I think like someone like my son, who is not going to be ready for a cell phone anytime soon, would have somewhat the same perks of an iPhone by having the touch. Now, could you give an old iPhone and just get rid of the cellular plan? Absolutely. You could totally do that. But I like the idea of the pricing of the one. It's like a starting point for him. I mean, people could say that the iPad is a good starting point for him too, but for something for him to carry around with him, I think they still could use the iPod name. The iPod name, I think, is still valuable, and now they just killed it. So, why can't the iPod name live still going around this world? So, to me, I think the iPod still was valuable. I think they could have still sold an iPod or updated it, just maybe not updating the iPod and giving it all these magical perks, but I think there was still value to it.
Well, you think maybe they could have taken some features out and made features exclusive to the iPod?
I don't think there's nothing exclusive they can have to the iPod, but I think having a low-priced, touch device in their hand is still something very valuable to have, without getting them a full iPhone.
Yeah.
So that's what I think personally. So that's me on the killing of the iPod Touch. And then number 2 is the Mac Pro not being released, because remember, the goal was in 2 years when they announced the M1 chip that they were going to have all their Macs upgraded, and Apple failed to meet that goal. Now, that could be because of what's happening in the world. At the time, there was no the pandemic was just starting, and they weren't, looking at what could possibly. But also, Apple just may have not figured it out yet, and they shouldn't have made that deadline, because now people have this expectation. Oh, I'm waiting for the Mac Pro, waiting for the Mac Pro. Well, now they set themselves up to fail. They have now missed that deadline. So, I think that not meeting the Mac Pro deadline, or at least announcing that they're not going to make that deadline, would have been something. We did get a Mac Studio out of the deal, which again is like the top product. I mean, collectively, we thought that was that and the AirPods Pro were definitely the 2 best products this year. But they definitely need to figure out what that, and again, no one who's watching this is buying a Mac Pro. Me and you are not buying a Mac Pro. But I'm very curious what Apple can do with technology with that kind of design, with their M1 chip.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that they're going to bring back the 27-inch iMac, but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, that's possible, but right now I don't see it happening. But my top number 1 is definitely the iPad 10 generation. It's so fresh in my mind of this release of this product. I'm like, I just bought a MacBook. I just bought an iPad Air. Why would anyone for $100 more not get that Air with the better chip, with the second gen support, other than the camera being placed somewhere else, which is not that big of a deal, because they have the camera can move within the scene of FaceTime anyway now with the wide angle camera. I just don't know why people would buy that model. I just don't know why. Well, it's just a confusing decision. If they got rid of the other one, okay, fine, but they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Or if they would have brought this model out and just replaced it at the same price, I don't think people would be upset.
Right.
You know, but it's ridiculous. It's a stupid iPad. And now you have, what, 5 iPads? 6? Yeah. You have 6 iPads in the lineup right now. That is so much stuff right now.
Yeah.
That there's very little difference between them. Yeah. It's just stupid. That was a really stupid decision. The iPad this year, I think, other than the iPad Air, they really just messed things up this year.
Well, I think perhaps the iPad 10th generation will be one of the ones you'll see deep discounted at Costco and BJ's and Best Buys, things like that next year. I just think they're going to be relatively cheap.
So we'll see what happens with Apple in 2023. I mean, so far, I think 2023, this was probably I looked it up. This is it's been about 6-7 years with the amount of products that were released. This was like the smallest amount. And that has a lot to do with, of course, what happened with inflation. Prices overseas went up dramatically.
Right.
And it's a tough year in tech in general.
Well, I will say this. Now is the time to, if you're looking at buying some stocks or thinking about buying some stocks, now is the time to get into Apple stock. It's I think this morning when I checked, it was like $123 a share.
It's $130 right now.
There you go. I mean, now people say, well, it's still $130. But, you and I owned it when it was almost $700 a share, and it's split, remember?
Yep.
So it's the price of today is still higher than when it split and it went to like 123, 125. But this certainly is, I think, a good entry point.
I mean, we made money regardless. I mean, no matter what, we have made money on Apple stock. Just right now, the entire market is terrible. And, until we get a new president, at least I don't see that.
That's
changing.
Not happening anytime soon.
Yeah,
so
no. So the market's going to struggle for a little bit. So, invest in it. Apple's definitely a safe bet unless they do something really stupid. Yeah. But otherwise, great 2022 is a way to end it with our worst. So wanted to bring it down in a negative mood, and that's exactly what we were here for. But I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Think Different Podcast. This is Will Frank, and I love every single one of you.
All right. Have a good new year.